And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Horror Metal Cast. I'm Stevie, and I'm here with my co-host, Joe Moore. And tonight we have an awesome guest. His name is Stephen Kozanowski, the horror author of several fantastic horror books, full-length and short stories. And welcome to the show, Stephen. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. You're more than welcome. Great to have you here.
Good stuff. So we have like a bunch of really exciting topics to cover tonight. I've got the chat up. Hopefully those of you that are listening will actually participate. And for those of you that are listening that can't because you're at work and shit like that, it's all good because some of you have already sent me questions and I've written them down because I love you and I'm a good friend. But anyway, so let's get started. Stephen, for those of us tuning in that are maybe don't know so much about you or are just now hearing about you, introduce yourself. Tell the people what you're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an author of horror and science fiction. I've actually been nominated for a Splatterpunk Award for my novel, The Hematophages. I've also a two-time winner of the Deadite Press Gross Out Contest. So my bona fides are there. I've written 7 novels, including one with our very own Stevie Kopis,
Awesome.
and a number of short stories, audio, serials. I'm kind of not just writing with a quill and a pen. I'm kind of doing a variety of stuff these days. So.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That is
awesome. So good. And simulated applause because we don't actually have like an actual audience, but that's amazing.
I'll do it. Yeah,
for your nominations and your awards. Big applause from from everybody. And yes, Stephen is right. We did co-write a novel together as well as participate in a couple of charity anthologies together at Hell's Gates. Those were a lot of fun. So awesome. Probably something that you get asked several times, probably a week or however. I mean, you were just at a con, so probably a lot. What got you into writing and why horror?
Well, I've been writing since I was a kid. I remember when I was like 6 or 7, and we used to have these things called typewriters. I don't know if you guys remember them. And my parents got a typewriter, and I sat down and I started writing a story about a brontosaurus, and his sister was a tyrannosaurus, and it was just about me and my sister. It was kind of a roman à clef. And I really never stopped. I wrote all through, middle school, high school, all that stuff. And I just kept putting off publishing. I joined the Army, and then I was like, oh, I'm in the Army. I can't possibly publish. I'll make the Army look bad. And then it was one thing after another. And then finally, I just sat down in 2009 or so, and I said, look, you need to either shit or get off the pot. And I did. I started getting published. I mean, it took 4 years. It wasn't that easy. As for why horror, that's kind of a funny story. I was always science fiction. I always wrote science fiction. That was what I loved. That was what I watched and everything. It just so happened that when I finally got published, the first novel I had that was publishable was Brain-Eater Jones, which was a horror novel. And after that, I wouldn't say pigeonholed, but when I found out what the horror community was like, and when you get invited on, video podcasts like this, and you go to the conventions, and the people welcome you with open arms, and compare that to how the science fiction community has been less welcoming. I just, I loved it, and I never looked back, and I made a real deliberate choice at that point to keep writing horror.
That's amazing. I actually really like that you said that, because several times on the show, Joe and I have both brought up how similar the horror and metal communities are and how accepting they are of not only fans, but of the artists themselves. And I think that that's awesome that's like something that you bring up, that you continue to write horror because of the community, and I think that that's excellent. So you were always a science fiction fan and writer. Do you think that, and because I'm of this thought process. Do you think that science fiction and horror, that they marry well, and that they, kind of bread and butter, peanut butter jelly type thing?
Yeah, I've always thought so. When you go back and you look at things like Aliens, which is really a horror story, or even Terminator. Right. Terminator is really quite horrifying. I always thought that they, went together, hand in glove. And it's funny when I did, not to just keep pimping my own work, but
no, that's what
whatever.
This is all
about. Yeah,
pimp yourself.
When I wrote the Hematophages, it was very much a horror story in deep space, and I was surprised when I came out with it how little of that there was. Like there was Dead Space, which was a popular video game a couple of years ago. I know you don't know anything about video games, Stevie.
Oh no, me?
I do.
And but a lot of people were saying, I don't normally read science fiction, but I tolerated this because the horror was so great. And on the other side, I heard a lot of people say, I don't normally read horror, but the science fiction was so great. And I was like, I thought, what about Event Horizon? And I
where have these people been?
Yeah. I was surprised. I guess there's just not that many people doing it. So
wow, that is actually really surprising. Because you would think with things like Aliens and Terminator, you fucking brought up one of the best films of the horror sci-fi genre, Event Horizon. Like,
yeah.
How did things like that, and even more recently, Prometheus and Alien Covenant and other sci-fi horror, deep space horror, how do those things come out and then people say shit like that? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
I don't know. I guess maybe it's just a literary thing. Maybe people aren't writing books about it. But I looked into it and I was like, really, maybe it's just like the ghettoization of the genres. Like maybe they exist, but they call themselves straight sci-fi or they call themselves straight horror. But
it kind of goes into the whole purist thing where you are either and Joe experiences that with metal all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, music. I mean, it's art. Art is art. I mean, whether you're a painter or a writer or a drummer or a musician, what have you, art is art, and there is a marriage there between the two, the purists and the not so pure. What's sci-fi to a metalhead or a horror aficionado would be maybe not pure to them. Something, it's a reversal sometimes. And they always marry. We get purists too, and it's not thrash metal, it's death metal. So we don't like you because you're thrash metal, right? But the thrash metal heads say, well, you're not really thrash metal, you're kind of like death metal, so we don't like you here either. So you eventually swim in the stream and you find your spot and they go, hey, they love you. And then you have, a following of sorts, that appreciates the stuff for what it is. I think that you, down the line eventually, and I'm sure, Stephen, you could attest to this, you find your place and your crowd and you understand them and they understand you. And it's a big, huge love fest. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do feel sort of bad. I've told both of you guys, but I don't know if the audience knows, I don't listen to metal. I never have. And there's such an overlap there.
Right.
And so often I'll wear, like, for instance, the Sisters of Slaughter they're a writing duo, right, but they made a cool metal looking shirt. So it's like you would look at it and you would think, oh, that's an old like Metallica shirt or something. And when I wear this shirt to conventions, I swear to God, there's no band called the Sisters of Slaughter. They are a writing duo. I swear to God. Every convention, someone comes up, oh, did you see the Sisters of Slaughter at Harrisburg in '88? No, they don't even exist. They're friends of mine, But
right.
Yeah, it's really great to meet folks like that.
People walk up to you like this. They're going like this to you, and you're like, yeah, dude, whatever. Right, because it doesn't, What I am interested in, not just because you don't listen to metal. What kind of music do you listen to? I mean, I want to know if that has an influence on your writing, and what does have an influence, like a big influence. What is the biggest influence on your writing, and is it music?
I don't know if it's music. My favorite band's The Who. I kind of go with that dad rock, Stones, and
Awesome.
you know, Cat Stevens and some of that stuff.
T for the Tillerman.
Yeah, T for the Tillerman and Teaser and the Firecat. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Awesome.
It's what my dad listened to, and it's what I grew up listening to, except for the Beatles. He liked them, and I always thought they were kind of, but no, I don't know if the music really deeply affects my work. I mean, I guess it must, because you know, it's always good to pull quotes from music. I mean, not more than 6 words at a time, because that's
right.
That's illegal. But you know, you know, anytime you can pull music and you know, break it up with and then you know, Whitney Houston sang about always loving me. Yeah.
Nothing in quotes.
Right. Nothing's ever in quotes.
So do you find, because I know that we've talked about this on our own, but do you find that writing with or without music works best for you?
I do like to write to music sometimes when it, you know, strikes me. But sometimes, you know, you're listening to it, and if it's not like instrumental, you're trying to sing along, and then you're not really getting anything written down. Or even worse, if I have the TV on. If I have the TV on, I'm just like watching TV, no matter how much I'm pretending like I'm editing or something.
Oh yeah, that's the same fucking thing. You just shut the laptop slowly closes, and you're just like,
yeah.
All right, so I absolutely want to get to some of the current stuff that you're doing now. But for people that aren't familiar, let's back up a little bit. How did you get started? And I mean, what motivates you? Like, was there fiction writers or horror writers that actually helped influence you? I mean, were you influenced by anybody at all, or no?
Yeah, I think my biggest influence was a horror author named Brian Keene.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And he's a good friend of mine now, which is kind of weird to say.
Wow.
But yeah, I started reading. He was writing zombie stuff when zombie stuff was not cool. And that inspired me. And when I started coming out with zombie stuff, I would do these little things like I'd say, you know, this character lives on Keene Avenue. Or, you know, you make references to Romero and people like that.
Right. Oh, yeah, Easter eggs, fun stuff.
Yeah. And when I finally met him, I was like, hello, Mr. Keene. I put you in this book of mine. And he really liked that. He really thought it was cool. Other influences, yeah, I mean, I read really eclectically. I was talking about, I read a lot of sci-fi growing up. So, you know, I'd read things like Kevin J. Anderson and some of those like Star Wars stuff back when I was a kid. I was actually surprised, though, at how much horror we really did read back then. Because, you know, a lot of what we were reading back then was like Goosebumps and Fear Street and Scary Tales to Tell in the Dark. And the more you think about it, the more you're like, oh, actually, we did read a lot of horror when we were kids.
Yeah. There was a lot of horror available for not just young adults, but for children.
Well, I don't think things were as politically correct as they apparently are today. And children were able, or allowed, I should say, to indulge in a lot more things. And we were able to take in a lot more. And I personally, my opinion is that was brilliant, because we wouldn't be shaped the way we are, or be the people that we are, for that matter, you know, without those influences.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So I think it's great. I mean, do you remember the first horror movie you saw?
I remember definitely seeing, well, you know what? If we're going back there, it would have been things like the original 30s Frankenstein and Dracula and the Universal monsters. I wasn't allowed to watch horror. my parents wouldn't let me watch horror. But that stuff was, you know, in black and white. And when it was something like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or The Creature from the Black Lagoon, they were like, oh, yeah, it's a classic. It's whatever.
Right. Of course, because they were, that's so awesome. Yes, because they were classics. So they weren't scary.
They couldn't be horror. Yeah.
No.
And, but I do remember being scared shitless by aliens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was creepy when they were walking on the ceiling silent. Because that's reminiscent of spiders, and I'm like the biggest. I'm not a spider guy.
No, he is not.
No, I work outdoors, and sometimes, I mean, I've had black widows dangling over my head, you know, and I look up and I'm absolutely mortified. I'm I turn into snow and I'm petrified right in front of them. So aliens did that, and. You know, oh, look, a squirrel. I'm running off, Stevie.
But that's actually a good segue into a question that I did want to bring up. So you're a horror author, you're a horror fan, you know, you're a full supporter and, you know, like not only creator, but consumer of the genre. So Alien was the first movie that really scared the shit out of you. What real life thing would you say is the most frightening thing that you feel that you could experience?
That I could or that I have?
Or no, that you could. No, we don't want to hear. I don't want your PTSD. No, I mean, like, what is the most real life situation that you know, like some people, they have recurring nightmares of like a house fire and they're trapped in a closet or something. Like, what's real life horror that you think is something that could really scare the shit out of you if played out right on the big screen?
Yeah. Something that's always terrified me, and this is more cerebral than like, oh, serial killer jump at me. But I've always been terrified at the idea of like dying alone and being forgotten. And something like that. Like that slow burn. Sometimes they try and do it in movies where it's like like somebody else takes over your life. There were like Tales from the Crypt episodes like that and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's my kind of existential dread. I'm like, I write and I'm like, oh, I hope I'm remembered after I die. And then I'm like, I'm going to die childless with no legacy. And it's just going to be
spoken like a true nihilist. I fucking love it.
No, I totally get where you're going with that. I mean, like being bricked up in a wall in some remote location and left there just to rot, you know? And maybe in like 100 years they'll find my remains and I got a storyline going in my head for it because it's.
Well, he said something really, because I just saw Us on opening night this past week, and he said something very that just caught my attention was the fact that somebody coming in and taking over your life, and then you're forgotten and no one knows. So that kind of like. I don't want to spoil anything about the film, but that kind of goes along with the whole evil doppelganger thing, which is like super creepy to me. You know what I mean? Like where you just there's this idea that somewhere out there there's an other of yourself that's just like as bad as you might think that you or someone else is. There's somebody fucking way worse out there. You know what I mean? So like the thought that a version of me could be this evil, psychotic, just awful person is out there somewhere and that they could take over my life or swap places. So then here I am, not a psycho. Now I have to deal with all their bullshit. You know what I mean? So like that, what you said right there, like not necessarily the whole, dying alone, but that somebody could steal my face, my identity, everything about me and just take over. Like I would say that's fucking scary.
That or being buried alive.
Ugh, I don't like that either. I don't think anybody likes that.
Of course I'm going to bring up what movie, Stevie, am I going to bring up? What?
Oh, Jesus.
You're right. Because I can't help myself. I have to bring up The Conjuring. I'm huge.
Jesus Christ.
A huge Conjuring fan. Because
every show. This is every show.
Well, I am. I absolutely love Ed and Lorraine Warren. I mean, I read all their works in real life, and they were real people. So it's based on real things. There's a scene in The Nun, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I'm gonna. No, I'll keep it to adult horror. I'm sure by now anybody who's seen it has seen it, and if not, you're in for a real treat anyway. The casket scene where he's underneath. I'm not gonna say who or where, and it's there's a bell involved. I'm not going to say what happens with the bell. Have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen The Nun. I saw The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, and was there another one? There's Annabelle. What's the other one?
Annabelles.
Yeah, I saw both of The Conjurings.
Right. He's buried under, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because it ties into what you're saying. The guy is buried under. It's bad enough being buried alive, right? And now there's something trying to bust in the casket while he's under there. He's like this, and you are not moving. It is pitch dark except for the one match he's holding. Woof, and it goes out, and you hear the scratching, and and I'm like, shit, get him out of there, So I get that. I understand that. That is a big fear, and stuff like that can happen in real life. I work in construction. So there's times, there's weird accidents like that we've heard of where guys have been walled into things, guys have fallen into things, cement mixers, hot kettles, things of that nature. So that's hard. To me, that is hard because I'm walking that line every day. So I
you just gave some psychopaths some really great ideas, Joe. Thanks.
Yeah, I push him into cement mixer, baby, and he'll love it. It's great. Yeah, I'm gonna work tomorrow. Don't love me.
That's what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, right?
Exactly. Okay, right. Being cement shoes and drown. That was Tales from the Crypt, where Ted Dawson was on the beach and the water. They buried him up to his neck. And they let the tide come in on him. Oh, that's just, and they filmed the other one watching. That's just priceless. That is creepy, hard, scary shit to me. That is priceless.
Oh yeah, because it's stuff that can actually happen. You know what I mean? Like we all love the fantasy.
I'm gonna be a loser though.
Horror.
I'm gonna say I think that was Creep Show, not Tales from.
Oh, it was good. I'm sorry. Right, Creep Show. Yep, thank you. I appreciate that. It was Creep Show.
I was gonna say I don't recall either. Yep. So that's why I didn't speak on it.
Creep Show. I'm actually a pretty big Stephen King fan, so it was Creep Show. There was part 2 to that too, and I think part 1 was definitely. I'm enamored to part 1. That was just awesome. The thing in the box that ate Adrienne Barbeau, that was awesome. That's hard. That's great horror. Are you into slash and gore more than creep factor, or
my great love is zombies. Which I was just reiterating. I was going through my DVD collection yesterday or this weekend, and I was like, okay, this whole row's for zombies, and then the next half row or so there's American Mary, and which Stevie recommended to me, and a couple of others. Yeah, but I was like, wow, there's a lot of zombie movies here. But yeah, no, I have no issue with the slow creeping. I can go back and read that Poe stuff and still get freaked out, and I'm happy to watching the Freddy and that kind of thing.
As far as zombies go, is it a biblical zombie or is it a chemical zombie?
I think Romero's are the best. The ones where they walk around. If you destroy the brain, you can stop them. But there have been good chemical and biblical too.
Right.
Are you more so, because I feel like we've had the conversations before, but for the sake of the show, what's scarier, fast or slow?
Fast is scarier for jump scares, but then slow is scarier because they build up and they're going to form that immovable mass. So I just feel like, my friends always used to joke, well, why don't you just run between them? It's like, well, yeah, that works for the slow ones briefly until they come en masse, and then it's like an unstoppable wave of, nature.
Like the other thing I've always compared the slow zombies to as well is do you remember in Halloween how Michael Myers never ran? and he just always seemed to just be coming at you. And that to me is how, like, even just one slow zombie, imagine you hurt your leg, or, you know, you're all fucked up in some way and you can't run away from it. So you're tripping and falling, just like, you know, these people from the slasher movies of old. And it's always there. It's a tireless enemy, and it will constantly just keep coming at you. So
Juggernaut.
That in and of itself can be terrifying too. I don't know. Fast ones, fuck, I'll kill myself immediately. But so that's always a question I like to ask people: if fast or slow gets you.
Yeah. Well, didn't they just do a movie? I haven't seen it, but a year or two ago, where it was just one zombie and it was chasing the woman across the desert. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It was something like in Las Vegas.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the movie, and I'll have to cheat and Google that later.
I didn't see it either. I'm going to look it up now. I'll look it up for the sake of just to name drop it. But I did not see that either. But I heard good. It was the same thing. Yeah. He just kind of is always there. Like, she even makes camp, and here he is on the horizon, just slowly trekking along in the sand, and just following like after her.
Just like the kid from Paperboy, you know, he's dead, but he still wants his $2, right? He's here he comes. And I mean, I get that too. I think slow in the end would do it. If it's slow, I mean, and you're cornered and it's inevitable, watching that slow, painful, horrible, you know, demise. That's a wet dream to a horror Africando. You know, I mean, you want to see that. You want to see somebody getting ripped limb from limb. You know, that's what we're paying for. What are your thoughts on like the Hellraiser stuff?
I saw the first Hellraiser. I haven't, definitely not caught up at all. What are there, like 10 or 11?
Yeah, I got out after 3.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the first one was great because it wasn't like, oh, Pinhead, like it wasn't like the Pinhead show yet.
Right, exactly.
You know, because it was cool. There was like a story and there's a reason, and then like, oh, here's a guy, and then I don't know. I kind of felt like in the later ones they were like, how can we shove Pinhead into this?
Right, it became a soap opera pretty much after that. But the first 2 I thought were phenomenal. I was a big Clive Barker fan, so
yeah,
you know, and that was another writer that was a big influence on me. Did you like Clive Barker stuff?
Yeah, I really liked the Inhuman Condition. His short stories with the left hand and the right hand. That was a freaky one. Yeah.
Weird, very weird. And King, were you a King fan?
I wasn't. I was not allowed to read King.
Okay.
My parents. So I've actually never read a King novel. I read On Writing and I read the 4 Seasons, but that's all the King I've ever read. So I know it kind of like you lose your cool points with that because people are always like, oh, it's like the scene in it.
I don't think so.
Actually, you know what? I think that's, I don't mean to jump on you, Stevie. I'm sorry, but I think that's awesome. I think that, you know, not having read his work or any of that, you know, it's away from you. As a drummer, I can relate to that. Back in the day, everybody was doing Neil Peart, and he was a bit from Rush, obviously, and doing the, you know, and I jumped on that wagon for about 12 minutes and, you know, got off because I wanted to retain some of me. I didn't want it to be my thing to be all Neil Peart's thing. So I understand. I actually think that may be a better way to be. As far as writing would go, in my opinion, I think that you are more you without him, if that makes sense.
Well, he brought up a good point with saying that he lost cool points, and I don't agree with that at all.
I don't either.
Because it kind of all ties back into the whole purist thing, and I can't ever stand someone. I don't like gatekeepers. That's a better thing to say rather than purists. Gatekeepers of communities or subgenres and genres, and just like general interest people who are like, oh, you're not a real fan because ... or you're not a real author because ... or you're not this and that. And like, who the fuck says so? Why? Who the fuck are you?
Right.
Do you have Stephen King's money? So what do you care if I like them or not? So I like that. I like that you said you might lose cool points, but I don't
doubt it. No, I don't
it's
think
not
so.
a detractor. It's not a detractor for me.
No, I think it's awesome. I do. I applaud that. I mean, most writers, have listened to his books or read his stuff or whatever. And 9 out of 10, it's this influence thing going on. And it's nice. It's actually refreshing that that you're not familiar with his stuff. I think it's great, man. It's more you in, the books, and people that read your work will now know that that's, not influenced by as said writer. And I'm not going to quote his name anymore. Yeah, I'll be royalties, right? Ching.
All right. So to jump in really quick, because I did look it up, the film that you brought up earlier about where the woman is going through Las Vegas is called It Stains the Sand Red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what it is. And it is available on Netflix. So I will probably check it out one of these days because I added it to my list and then I just kind of never got around to it. So I do have a couple questions. I just got another one texted in. And so we can kind of move on to a couple of questions here from audience people that can't participate in the chat. By the way, Adrian is in the chat because he did say hi.
Hello, Adrian.
So hello to Adrian.
We love Adrian.
Ask some questions. Don't be a creep and just sit there. So this question for you, Stephen, is from Bree. And she said, and you had brought up earlier that, you were kind of, you found yourself pigeonholed, but you enjoyed the horror community so much. So what she would like to know is that with being involved in certain industries, it's more than just a career, but a community with common interests. So do you think being a part of the writing / horror community firsthand has been a welcoming and positive experience for you? And, could you give any kind of example?
We lost feed, I think.
Is he there? I don't know.
We lost feed, I think.
I don't know what happened. I was reading. I thought he was just staring.
No, yeah.
I thought he was just staring.
No, we actually lost feed for a second. People were working on that. Oh, we lost him.
Oh, all right. So, Joe, entertain people while I send another invite.
So what the hell's up with everybody? How's everybody doing out there? Adrian, how are you? I'm glad you guys are here. We have Stephen Stepniewski in the room with us, and I think he's coming back. Here he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. I heard Bree's question was we're in a community of common interests.
Yes, a community of common interests. And then I very awkwardly thought you were just staring at me. And I was like, okay. Because the feed was just you staring at me. And I was like, does he not like the question?
It's the fifth dimension thing. And we do that. We do that.
No, she had said that, do you think being a part of the writing and horror community firsthand has been a welcoming and positive experience for you? And, do you have any examples of that?
Great question.
Yeah. Horror specifically has been amazing. When you jump in, you go to conventions, the horror conventions like Scares That Cares, and KillerCon and some of those various ones. It's like going to an old reunion with a family you didn't know you had. I guess that's the best way you can put it. It's like as soon as you get there, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe it's you. I read your stuff. Welcome, come have a beer." I met Jack Ketchum at World Horror Con. He's like, "Oh, let's go have lunch together." I'm like,
"Oh, that's awesome."
All right. I have noticed there's a lot. And the reason why I specify with horror is because I've noticed with a lot of writing, like it seems to be, I don't want to call anybody out in particular, but there is a lot of horse shit where people are like, "Oh, I hate you, you're not good enough for me, and I'm gonna cut your shins and this and that and the other thing."
I second that. I fucking agree wholeheartedly.
There's so much of that online. And I'm not gonna say we don't have that in horror, but for the most part, we can be like, "Hey, don't talk to that fucking asshole. Don't talk to Stevie Kopis or whoever." But But yeah, I've seen a lot of that in the writing field, but horror, I think, has been great.
Awesome. Very good. And then another question is from another friend of mine is, how do you feel that authors experience horror differently based on age and gender?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was. Did you guys all watch the Handmaid's Tale recently?
I have seen it 3 times.
I have not. I have not, and I will.
I'm fucking obsessed. So
you're a glutton for punishment, I guess. But
dude, I love the concept, and I'm not knocking Margaret Atwood, but the show is better than the book, and that's all I'll say on that. So
yeah. Well, I thought it was amazing what I think they quoted it in there, but it was an Atwood quote where she said, "Men are afraid that women will laugh at them, and women are afraid that men will rape and kill them." And I was like, that is very, really talks to our experience. And yeah, so I think like that is actually really kind of accurate, because in a lot of ways, the things that men fear are like humiliation, and I don't want to get all sexist and specify too much, but yeah, since you asked, absolutely, I think that depending on who you are and depending on your gender, there are different things that are fear-inducing. And when I think about things, like I've talked to my girlfriend about this, I have literally never, if I go Pokemon hunting and I go to a park at 9 p.m. at night in Harrisburg City or something, I have literally never worried about it. I've never said to myself, I am in danger now. And my girlfriend's like, I wouldn't walk into the parking lot without having my mace out and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
And I'm like, it is such a different experience being male or female in America. And I can only imagine in other countries. I don't even know our culture well enough to speak to it at any length. But we have such a different experience due to our gender, due to our appearance and various things, that yes, of course, the things you're going to read, like I'll read something and be like, oh yeah, that serial killer, I probably would have popped him in the face or something. I don't know. But yeah, it absolutely speaks to our, what scares us.
Right.
Yeah, excellent. I like that. I like that answer. It was a great answer. A great question from an awesome girl. And she also has another question for you. This is my friend Christina, by the way. She said, and then this is not to like, well, I mean, we're going to change subject anyway, because I mean, we'll just be here for 4 hours if we want to talk feminism with me. But
God.
She said she had asked, and she kept asking me this the other night because she started Slashbiver on Friday morning, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer because you can just find out Monday. But she doesn't understand. Like, she is just amazed. And people have been co-writing novels for like ever, but I guess it's so exciting, I guess, to know someone that writes, and she just wants to know, how do you know what parts to write when you're co-writing a novel, and how do you make it so seamless?
Well, it sounds like a cop-out, but it's choose the right collaborator.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing.
And in the case of Stevie, I felt like, and you can say what you want to say about me, but I felt like we were so simpatico. We didn't even specify what we were going to do or when we were going to stop. And I think maybe that speaks to why it went so well together. But
yeah, we didn't set rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes I would be like, I sort of know where I'm going, but I'm bored with this chapter. And I'd be like, hey, take it. And you would take it in a completely different direction. Or sometimes I'd be like, sometimes it would be either hard, or I'd be like, or there's something exciting that I wanted to do, and I could just like drop it or pick it up. And that was really cool. I've had experiences collaborating with other people, and sometimes you have to be more regimented, but I think it's just a matter of feeling things out. But yeah, I'm interested, Stevie, in what was your experience?
I feel like we've also covered this before, but never like live in person. We've just kind of been able to like edit like pretty little responses. But no, I would say exactly the same thing. Pick your person. and know them well. And I think we had such a seamless experience with it because we didn't set rules. We didn't set like, don't do this and don't write about that and mind your manners. You know, it wasn't any like,
there were no parameters.
Yeah, we didn't put ourselves in a box and fucking feel like we had to stay there. And it was kind of like Steven said, where if we were like not feeling something, we'd be like, cool, I wrote this many words today, you know, take it and run with it. What do you want to do? We would leave each other notes as we wrote, you know, and sidebar comments. And then there were other things, like there was a very specific scene, an entire chapter actually in /Fiverr that so Steven had left off, and not, you know, to give any spoilers, but one of the villains, we kind of give her backstory, and Steven had started the chapter, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not touching this. This is fucking awesome. He needs to finish this, you know, and you find that voice for each other, and you know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and he had really found that voice for that villain and really built up that backstory. And so that's the thing is you know how to praise one another, you know how to lift each other up rather than hold each other back, because I think there's a lot of some people, not going to call anybody's names out, somebody else said that earlier, but some people will be nasty and cutthroat and want to cut other authors down, whereas some other people will be like, no, we need to fucking all like be on the same page here. We're all working toward the same goal. You know, it's not a race, in my opinion anyway. So that's, I had a great experience with it. I thought it was fabulous. And there you go, Christina. That's how it went.
There it is in a nutshell.
Yes.
There you have it.
So, and she'll probably listen to 45 seconds of this and then shut it off, because that's all she wanted to know. She kept asking me Friday. I said, just fucking listen on Monday. But yes, very good. So I'm going to move on to the next one, unless other people have any other questions in the chat. Those were my text message questions for you. Tell
Adrian.
us, yeah, Adrian's he's still watching. He's just not asking questions. Tell us, Steven, about your new cover art for Brain Eater Jones, which, by the way, everybody, I tweeted it, I IG'd it, I put it on Facebook. That new cover promo art that you saw for our thumbnail for tonight's episode is Steven's new cover for the re-release of Brain Eater Jones. So tell us who did it, why, and when it's coming, like what date. I know you said you're lazy and it'll happen when you do it, but give us a date.
March 29th. I'll probably have it done this week.
I like it. The 29th, everybody. You heard it here first.
Exclusive. Yeah. We got an exclusive.
And, that cover was a Horror Metal Sounds exclusive. I have not shown that to anyone except your fans here. So what happened was, that was my first novel, published in 2013. So for the most part, novel rights are for 5 years. If you don't have your rights revert in 5 years, you've been swindled, my friend. But you should, at least maybe 10 years, depending on what you, however you work it out with your agent or your publisher. So mine came back just last month. So I went to Chris Enterline, who's a great, he's a friend of mine. He's a great horror illustrator, and he also did this this rat riding a dolphin. I'll keep talking so you guys can hopefully see that.
Yeah, that's a real life depiction. Of us writing /Fiverr together.
Could you send that to us signed, please?
It is.
I have it. I have it on my phone. I will share it later.
Yes, so I went to Chris, and this was the first time I've ever done this, but I said, you know what? I've done so many fucking covers for Brain Eater. Do whatever you want. It's about a zombie in the 30s. And he did that cover with the, femme fatale, with the dame, and he came up with all that himself. I don't think he has even read the book yet, and I said, that's great. There is actually a femme fatale, and there's actually a zombie detective and everything. So, the rights are back. I got the cover on Thursday, so I should have it up probably in the next week or two.
Excellent.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna hold you to the 29th. So
Okay.
you made that bet. So
sticking to it, right?
There you go. You got to lay in it now.
Yeah.
Adrian would like to know: are any of your books available for purchase in Ireland?
Ireland. Yeah, everything's on Amazon UK. Is there a separate Amazon for Ireland?
Yeah, I believe there is.
I don't know.
Sure there is.
Well, I'll check into it, but I believe so. I know they're Amazon UK. If you can't find them on Amazon or Kobo. Kobo's big in Ireland too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So most of my books are on Kobo too. If you really cannot find anything, shoot me an email. I will send you a courtesy copy. Just for my Irish fans, I guess.
Wow, that's awesome. Very cool. You hear that,
yeah.
Adrian? Cool. So if you can't, no, he said no. It is UK. So cool.
All right.
Very good.
There you go.
So
all right.
There you have it, Adrian. You can go on Amazon UK and find all of Steven's stuff. Very good stuff. Awesome. Okay. Next question that we have, Joe. I know you had several, so I'll hand it back over to you.
I really just I'm very much into the influences and what makes things tick and what makes you motivated and what doesn't. I mean, all right. So you've told us quite a lot about what motivates you. What turns you off? I mean, what about the industry would you change if you could?
Yeah, it's funny. I think Stevie, maybe this is why we're so simpatico, but I feel like Stevie really hit the nail on the head a few minutes ago when she was saying there's people that just will tear you down. A lot of people will tear you down if you've had a modicum of success.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They'll be like, well, that's no good. You can't be popular now. I'm like, well, then what are we all working for?
Exactly. Like, what are we doing?
You know, suddenly people will tear you down. And I also think she mentioned, I don't think she used these exact words, but, you know, she said a rising tide, you know, raises all boats. And that's why I don't talk shit about E.L. James or, you know, who was it that wrote Twilight? I'm like, okay, Twilight wasn't great and 50 Shades of Grey wasn't great. But guess what? People are reading books. They're reading shit. They're reading horror.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of little vampire teeny boppers that are now reading vampire books now because of that.
Right.
So, you know, and even just the fact that people are reading who were not reading before, you know, I have no issue with that stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of this kind of pettiness and this kind of like points keeping where people will be like, oh, well, he had a book with this publisher and he had I just had my foreign language sale. And I'm like, you know, why are you going to worry about what other guys are doing?
I agree 100%.
No,
couldn't have said it better.
Totally get that.
And I feel like we've kind of, Joe and I have kind of talked about that on the show before as well. Like he, you know, not naming names or anything like that, but he has experienced that in the metal community with musicians just being fucking just
petty. I mean, once you've, you know, earned a degree of success in your field and you've moved to a different plane, immediately there's people that want to grab you by the pant leg and pull you back down and you know, you don't deserve that. You shouldn't be there. I can't be there, so you can't, you know. And
instead of asking, how did you get there? What do I need to do?
Right. I mean, if you put the work, and I believe this in life, period. I mean, if you put the work into something and you push as hard as you can and you do the things that are necessary to achieve that, then nobody should touch that. You know, that should be left alone. That should be yours. And unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. There is always going to be people out there that are going to tear you down. But the thing that they can't take away is your success. And Steven, you're a published writer. You've been out for a long time. You've got a long-standing record. I did go to your blog. I read a lot of it. I know about you. No, I checked it out, and you know you've stood the test of time. Obviously, you know you have a great deal of success, and that is something that you should obviously, and I'm sure you are, be very proud of. And that nobody should try to tear down. You know, you shouldn't tear asunder somebody else's success. That's just my point of view on life. What is your one question? God bless you, Stevie. One question I definitely wanted to ask you was your thoughts about taking your body of work and making it into a screenplay or a movie. How would you feel if somebody approached you, or maybe they have?
They have. I had a couple of years ago. I guess it's in what you call development hell now, which means we're working on it. That's when Hollywood tells you we're working
special.
on it.
Don't downplay it.
But we were talking about my narrator. Funny enough, for Brain-Eater Jones, it's a great narrator. This guy named Steve Rampici, and he told me his great goal in life is to be an action figure. So like his mentor was Rob Paulson, who did Yakko and Pinky from the Animaniacs. And he said, I've always been jealous that Rob had an action figure, and I want an action figure. So we're gonna make a Brain-Eater animated cartoon show. So
cool.
Yeah, so I did a Bible for that, and a couple of test scripts and that kind of thing. And I would love for anybody to pick that up and make Steve into an action figure. And I think that in terms of anybody wanting to adapt things, as long as the money is there, it doesn't bother me. Like, people are always like, "Oh, well, that movie killed the book." I'm like, no, it didn't. The book's still there. The book's still on the shelf. If you want to read it. If they make it terrible,
purists. Purists.
Yeah.
God damn it.
If they make a terrible /Viver miniseries, I'll be like, hey, you can still buy the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Hey, if anybody does want to make a terrible /Viver miniseries, we're all fucking for it, y'all.
There you go.
Yeah. Asylum.
There you go. Calling out to all my movie people in the world. Let's go. Get these guys a movie deal, please.
Tell me this, just because we're coming up here, we got 8 minutes left, and I'm a stickler for time. I'm like that Judge Judy meme. Tell me about, or tell everyone about, without giving spoilers, or maybe there's something you want to tell everybody exclusively tonight. What have you have coming up? What are you working on now? And what are you most excited about for the future?
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll give you guys an exclusive. But the first thing I'm working on, I mentioned earlier, I just had the Italian language version of the Hematophages come out.
Yes, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So the Italian company asked me for a novella for marketing purposes, and I sold so I gave that to Dunwich Editions for the Italian version, and I sold the English version to Sinister Grin, who also did the Hematophages.
Awesome.
So that should be coming out later this year. I'm really excited about that. And Joe was bringing up earlier, if you go to my blog, I have a piece called the Thing Under the Bed.
Love it.
And I've been working on a novella-length version of The Thing Under the Bed because I've been trying to test that because I think it would make a great movie, and I think a novella is the first step. Either novella or short story, but to get it published independently. So I am working on that currently. So that's the Horror Metal exclusive.
Well, you made my night, man.
Yep.
And then, of course, your blog is, so I can put it in the chat,
manuscriptsburn.blogspot.com.
Okay, just making sure I had it right before I sent it out to everybody. So I just sent to the chat, everyone, manuscriptsburn.blogspot.com.
That was actually, that was my question. That was one of my big, here I go, I'm jumping in. I'm just jumping right on top of you because I can't, I'm bubbling over, Stevie, I'm bubbling. That was one of my biggest questions tonight. I was wondering when I was going to be able to get to it, and you just, ripped that sucker right out there perfectly.
Because he's a mind reader.
What's the URL of the blog?
Listen, we talked a little bit. Stephen and I actually talked a brief second about it before we started the telecast, and I'm going to tell everybody right now, if you love horror, get your ass up to that blog and check out that short story, because I'm telling you, it was a bright sunny day in my home when I read it, and it could have been 4 o'clock in the morning, and I could have been alone with Michael Myers behind me with, Jason and a chain, because I was that scared, dude. It was really creepy. I mean, it on a creep factor 1 to 10, you definitely nailed an 11 in my eyes. And to hear that may become something else, it's huge. That's going to be congratulations. That's awesome. And I'm bubbling like a schoolgirl. Sorry.
Chris Enterline just joined the chat, by the way. He said, "Garsh, I missed most of it."
Who's in?
The artist.
The artist that did.
And
okay. Pat riding the dolphin. So,
welcome all in the chat. Hello. It's
yeah, in after the fact, whenever we're like close to the end like this, don't worry, you just have to wait a couple of minutes because the live broadcast eventually goes to a pre-recorded broadcast, and then you can like fast forward as you want, skip the shit and just listen to what you want to listen to. But as long as you listen to it, it's all good. So, Steven, 5 minutes left. Tell the people where they can follow you online, where they can read your good stuff, where they can read everything basically from you. Tell them, and I will put the links in the chat.
Okay. Amazon.com/author/Kazanowski. That's everything is available on Amazon. Like I was saying earlier, most stuff's available on Kobo. If you really genuinely cannot get a hold of something and you're not just yanking my leg, just shoot me an email. I will send you a courtesy copy. If you're, I don't know, and I don't want to make fun of some country, but if you're in, Latveria or somewhere,
like Guam,
sure, yeah. I didn't want to say somewhere real, but yeah, sure. Yeah, and the blog is manuscriptsburn.blogspot.com, and like we've been talking about ceaselessly, there's some free stuff on there.
Ooh.
And on Twitter, it's Outfortune, which is short for Outrageous Fortunes, which I don't do anymore, but that's still my Twitter handle. So if you can spell it right, you can probably find me online.
Yep. And I did spell it right, so you can find all that shit in the chat there.
Right, we'll put it in the chat.
Yes. I don't really have any more questions unless there was anything more that Steven wanted to talk about.
Well, I had a question for Joe.
Okay.
I wanted
Does
to
it involve coffee?
Sort of. I was going to ask your feelings about Keith Moon.
Keith Moon was probably one of the most underrated pioneering drummers ever to grace rock, in my opinion. Everybody was sold on Bonham. Bonham was doing it, but he was just hitting a lot harder. Keith Moon was one of my first influences, and it is still to this day very dear and close to my heart. I love him. Very unorthodox. He wasn't schooled, he wasn't a purist. And I followed his genre in the same fashion. I'm not schooled as a drummer. I was never, I got thrown out of school band for writing my own drum line. So that should tell you pretty much, my thoughts on the thing. And I love him. And I do appreciate that question. Thank you.
Great. So you're like the Keith Moon of your generation.
Yeah, I'm a little rebel. A little caffeinated rebel.
Oh my God, I'm
over caffeinated. So I bounce off walls. I'm an animated character, pretty much. Stevie will tell you.
Oh yeah, Joe is an absolute from morning to night, and I know this because he's married to my sister. He is nonstop. He is like this all the time, the time.
6 o'clock in the morning, People my poor wife is trying to, just wait. She just wants to sit and have a cup of coffee. And I'm like, so what do you think? You want to go out today? Is today a good day to go out? What do you think? Is the sky blue still? What do you think? Is the grass green? What do you think? Hun. She's like, running for the hills.
And then
that's just me. That's the way I am. But no, yeah, Keith Moon was actually a very eclectic guy like that too. He's very, I think maybe he was hyperactive before they knew what hyperactive was too. And I
think hyperactivity makes drummers better though, because you have to have that energy level.
We're all kind of ADD and loopy. Most drummers are a little off kilter if you haven't noticed, folks. That's a requirement. And you gotta love coffee, which
Oh my God.
I absolutely. Do you drink coffee? Do you like coffee?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I drink a pot a day.
All right, then one day, Stevie, the three of us will get together for a pot of coffee.
Well, he's closer to your neck of the woods. He's up there by you, Joe. So you could drive out and take him to Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, yeah. Well, I just banged on the glass with my ring. This thing is like a tank. Look at that thing. Tim Hortons. Is there any Tim Hortons out there?
Oh no, not in Pennsylvania. I don't think.
Not yet, right?
Yeah, it's great. When I was in Quebec, I loved Tim Hortons. But,
yeah, they're here. There's some in Jersey now. They are moved. Yeah, they have moved south, and you do know what I'm talking about. That's awesome. They were, I guess, Canada's equivalent to Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, but maybe a step up.
Right, and they're better, I think, actually. Because I'm a huge Dunkin' fan. I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
And Chris would like to know, Stephen, are you sure you just drink one pot? Because he's gonna one up you. He says he drinks like 3.
Well, Chris is Mr. Plow. He's out plowing the roads and mowing the lawns during the summer and plowing the roads in the winter. So he's got to have 3 pots. But me, I just work a white collar job, Chris. So how do you like that? How do you like that, Chris?
All right. You know what? I don't normally do this, but just bear with me for a sec, folks. Okay, 1 second.
This is Joe. This is Joe all the time. It's so hilarious.
Hey, are you gonna show off your Nuka-Cola there?
Oh, you know what? It's always there in the background for everybody who watches every week, and you see my magical Nuka-Cola in the background. This was actually sent to me by Steven because he's
very cool
friend, and he is the fucking best. And for anybody who doesn't know, even though I have more tattoos for BioShock than I do Fallout is my favorite video game series. So that's from Steven. So every time you see that beautiful Nuka-Cola back there, you know who to thank for being an awesome guy.
Can you guys see this or what? Do you see this?
Jesus Christ.
Holy shit.
That is my thermos. I go to work with this. Here's my little cup. Here's my little drink. That's my thermos. That's what I drink at work usually every day. That'll get me through most of the day until I get home and my very beautiful and very illustrious wife, Christina, puts a pot of coffee on for me when I walk in the front door, which I'm enamored about because I could smell it as soon as the key hits. And I'm like, I know it's in there, And I drink a lot of coffee too. But
all right, so Joe's Judy stepping in, tapping the wrist, tapping the watch. It is 7.
It's that time.
It is overtime.
We are over, Stevie.
I'm a busy lady with things to do on a Monday night. So, with that being said, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on our humble little podcast. And one more time, if you want to, plug whatever you got going on, spotlight's yours.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. My latest release was the Italian version of the Hematophages. So if you speak Italian, great. If not, before that was /Fiverr with our very own Stevie Copas.
Awesome. Very cool. Guys, please get out there and buy these books. Both authors are amazing. And now I know both of them personally, and I'm enamored to have had you on the show. Stephen, thank you so much for coming in and spending an hour with us, man. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to be stalking your writings now, so be prepared. And it was awesome to have you here. Thank you.
Good stuff. And I'll just say before we go that Chris and I have another thing in common, that Fallout 76 is the fucking worst Fallout to ever grace the world with its presence. With that being said, thank you everyone for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share. As always, thank you for stopping by horrormetalsounds.com, your one-stop shop for what's hot or not in horror and metal. You guys are awesome. Keep it tuned in for next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We will have another guest. I will reveal that later in the week. Thank you, guys. Adios from me, Joe, and Steven. Keep it creepy.
Be good, guys.